Morning Barbershop Talk. It is Saturday time for another show, 12520. We want to welcome you back in for our show today. We have in my opinion, one of the best shows that we've had in our first 2 seasons of doing Barbershop Talk South Minnesota. So you tuned in for a great show today. We have Michael Munoz from Rochester Public Schools. He'll be here getting us in the know about the school system and what's going on. Plus, you get to know our superintendent here in Rochester as a part of the process. So thank you for tuning in. One quick note, we do apologize for the technical difficulties with Dan Feehan yesterday, but we kind of still got some video up for you to see his show as well. So again, thank you for tuning in. You are about to get into a great show. But before that, we want to make sure that we again promote our fundraising calendar, our leadership calendar 2020. This was put together by an amazing graphic artist, Lee Green. If you don't know this brother, get to know him. He has great skills. He can do great work for you and your organization. But he put together an amazing calendar of 12 leaders within our community. And this is our fundraising calendar for this year. As you know, here at Barbershop Talk, we're going and growing and doing what we do, and nothing is free. And so we're beginning to grow from our grassroots nature into becoming more of what God has for us. And to do so, it is what it is. You need money, you need people. So we're starting to do a lot of things, such as adding an advisory board, getting some job descriptions in, and improving our mission and vision statement. Some of those things, and among those things, figuring out how we can have or raise money or earn money to make sure Barbershop Talk is still here for this community. We have grown in the last 2 years to about 469 followers and about 450 likes on Facebook, not to mention those folks that like us on our YouTube channel. So we've grown, and we want to continue to grow and be a service to this community through our medium here at Barbershop Talk. And to do so, we do need to raise funds. So this fundraising calendar is twofold. One, it is to fundraise, not only for our organization, but for another organization. We wanted to do something outside of our box of media or online media to make a difference in this community. So we chose Seeds of Wisdom Academy for this year, a black-owned and operated school and daycare as a part of this fundraiser, and then funds will go to Barbershop and Social Services and Barbershop Talk to continue to do what we need to do. So this is a fundraising calendar. There is no question I am asking you to buy a calendar, all 469 of you, 450 of you, to contribute to what we're doing here. If you like what we do, not only hit like on Facebook, and all the beautiful things that you have said to us, now please begin to donate. And this is one area to donate to our services and what we do. What is special about this calendar, and secondly, we wanted to make sure, as we do in our show, that we have positive imagery of African Americans in our communities. So often we see the negative images. We wanted to make sure that positive African American images are out there, not only that, and other minorities in our community. So that is the second fold reason for this calendar. So 2020, our first annual calendar. We look forward to doing it next year. We already got a couple of people to jump in on that calendar, but we need to get through 2020 here. So please help us out. We are asking you in that. Those that have liked us, those that like what we do, buy a calendar so we can continue to do what we do here at Barbershop Talk. Okay, real quick, and we're going to get into our show today. But we want to make sure we talk about future shows. On February 1st, we have the good folks, Rochester Moms Demand Action. So those folks will be coming to talk about gun violence. Amazing some of the stats around gun violence in our community in Minnesota. And then on February 15th, it says January here, it's February 15th, we have Dr. LaPrincess Brewer from Mayo, and she also runs the faith program. So that's going to be pretty amazing. There's some other shows coming up after that, but we wanted to remind you of those shows. And then we're working on a show, yes, you're going to hear this correctly, with the governor of Minnesota. So you'll hear more about that coming up, both the governor and hopefully the lieutenant governor as well. So upcoming shows, they are coming. Again, support us on our calendar. More shows are coming. A lot of stuff is coming. So make sure you tune in and support as we go and grow. But hey, we got to get to this show. It's an amazing show. Here the man is, a leader here in Rochester, Minnesota, a man that has broken the glass ceiling as a minority in what he does, an exemplary man, a man that's taken on a lot of stuff, Michael Munoz. All right, Barbershop Talk, thank you for tuning in again on this Saturday. This is our third show this week, so we've been going. Thank you for tuning in. We're going to jump right in. We have Superintendent Michael Munoz here. What a privilege to have him here on our show today, and we thank you for coming. We'll get into it with Mr. Munoz here in a couple of seconds. But we wanted to remind you, this is Barbershop Talk Minnesota. We are here for the at-risk, the minority, the voiceless, and in the guise of what Paul Wellstone, the late Paul Wellstone said, we all do better when we all do better. That's what we're all about here as a show here in Rochester and throughout South Minnesota. That's our goal for this show. So make sure you support us in that notion. I want to double up on something that Dan Feehan said yesterday, and it was huge. He said something to the effect, either get into politics or politics will get into you. We do this to help us all be aware of what's going on, and also to motivate folks to come out and vote and get involved with Rochester Public Schools. Voting for all kinds of things. Yeah. Things won't change unless you jump out. Be the change you want to see, and we want to encourage you in that way as we do what we do here at Barbershop Talk. Additionally, we have our first annual leadership calendar out. This is our fundraiser. It's a fundraiser for two things. Seeds of Wisdom Academy here locally. It's a daycare and school. We want to support them, Black-owned and operated, and then also what we're doing here at Barbershop Talk. This is our second season. We are grassroots, but we're growing, so we need to add new cameras and various things. So we're beginning to fundraise and do some advertising and what have you. So this is our first big fundraiser for what we're doing. So we asked all 400, and I looked at, we have 469 followers, 450 likes. I don't know what the difference is. I'll have to read up on Facebook.
Click the like button. If you haven't clicked it yet, click that like button.
Click the like button, and then all 400 plus of you, please buy a calendar, as this money will go to a couple of things.
Tell them about the page. Go to the page and then click the like button.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I didn't say that yesterday. Go to our Barbershop Talk page and hit that button. And then there's a Shop Now button if you want to buy the calendar off of that, which will hit you over to PayPal to buy that calendar. The second reason why we have this calendar is we want to promote positive images of our minority folk. We want to show positive identity of who we are. Often the media doesn't give the best light of minorities, and so we're definitely we want to do that not only as a show but also this calendar. So please buy. Thank you for those that have already bought a calendar, but make sure you buy a calendar. So again, thank you for coming into Barbershop Talk. We're not going to get into all the Keep It Real segments because we've been going crazy this week, but we'll go with one, and we're going to challenge you on this, Mr. Munoz. Who you got for the Super Bowl? The 49ers or the Chiefs? You got a lot of students looking at you right now. This is pressure.
And I know you're still kind of early. You're still kind of feeling the way about the 49ers. Doing the Vikings, you know. Let's give an honest answer.
Well, growing up, we were always Kansas City Chiefs fans.
Oh, that's right, Nebraska.
You have to go with the Chiefs.
Oh, wow, that makes sense. So this is a good year for you.
Yes, it is.
Oh, well, very good. So go Chiefs, as far as what Superintendent Munoz is saying. But I'm going to go with him, too. I'm going for the Chiefs, but I don't know. That defense of the 49ers, that kind of scares me a little bit. I don't know.
Yeah, it don't matter to me. My Bears are gone, so I just want to see a good game.
Yeah, good game.
I just want to see a good game.
Good game and good wins and good Super Bowl fixings and, yeah, all that. But anyway, Superintendent Munoz, thank you for being here.
Pleasure to be
here. We want to show some care for you, Mr. Munoz, right now, because you just came from Palm Springs, as I understand it, at a conference, as you told us. and now you got to come back to this. Are you okay?
Well, adjusting to the time change, and then it's a lot colder when I got off the plane. It's definitely a lot colder.
Okay, so you're doing okay.
Yeah.
The jet lag, the snow, the slip and slide, it's all good.
Yeah.
Coming from the beautiful, that's Florida, right? Palm Springs, Florida.
California.
Okay, my fault.
It's okay. Donnie, you crazy.
California. It's tropical there too, though, right?
Yeah.
It's, okay, good. Well, thank you for coming, Superintendent Munoz. We appreciate you being here. Oh, we got some students coming in, looks like. Yes, this is great. So we got some students coming into the show, but you've been here since 2011, is that correct?
Yes.
And now you're here, you're running the second largest organization in Rochester. In some sense, I was thinking about this. You're kind of, good or bad, you're kind of Rochester's dad. I mean, you're over all of these students, and whether things go good or bad, they come to Dad Munoz to get it all correct. And I mean that positively, but thank you for what you do, because that's a lot of responsibility, taking care of a lot of lives and helping them getting educated and moving on to bigger and better. So we thank you for what you do.
Big responsibility.
Big responsibility. Third largest city in Minnesota. So no doubt this is a big responsibility, and we appreciate what you do. We want to welcome the students here. Thank you all for coming.
Hi.
Who do we have here, just so we can throw that out there?
Hi, I'm Michaela Lenore. I am in 8th grade and I go to John Henry Middle School.
Ooh.
My name is Myron Glover. I'm a senior and I go to John Marshall.
Okay, great.
Hi, and I'm Nishana Johnson Lenore. I'm the founder of the Journey program.
Oh wow, well, thank you. So we got a lot of guests. We got some regulars over here. If you all want to say your name. Oh, they don't want to drop it because they're too famous.
Ellen. I wish she comes
Good enough.
All right, so thank you for being here, Superintendent Munoz. So can you tell us about who you are? I know you're from Nebraska. Obviously, you've been here for 11 years. And what got you into this whole thing called education?
Well, growing up, as a young child, my father kept telling me that education is the key, and I have to admit, when I was growing up, I had no idea what he was talking about. But as I got older, what I realized what he was telling me is that with an education, you can be whatever you want. That key, it gives you a key to go through any door you want to do and be what you want to be. And I think just that passion that he had for education, he was a high school graduate. My mom was not, and I'm a first generation college graduate. But I think just the fact that he kept expressing to me how important education was growing up, it's kind of led me into the field of education.
Wow. So I often get this confused, and I'm not saying other folks do, but I'm assuming there's some type of confusion. You have the board, the Rochester Public Schools board, and then you as the superintendent. Can you give us an idea of what both do? Because sometimes I think people are looking at the board to do things, and then you, and what's the difference there?
Yeah, really, the board they're my bosses, so I have 7 bosses, and really their role is to govern the system, and a couple of the main areas that they really focus on is board policy, which in most sense are kind of like the rules that we follow, and it's my responsibility as a superintendent to implement those policies.
Okay.
And then the other big responsibility is the approval of the overall budget for the district. And so really they're more in a governance mode, whereas as a superintendent, you're managing the day-to-day operations of the system.
Okay, very nice. So you've been here almost 10 years.
Yeah, this is my 9th year. 9th
year. Rochester is a great community, but it's very unique, obviously with Mayo being here, the Minnesota's largest organization. It's a company town in a sense, but it's a different type of company town. It's not like a meat packing plant or whatever. It is a hospital, high paid, very qualified individuals in what they do. So it's in sense it's a transient town. A lot of folks come here to work at Mayo. A lot of people get their resume built up here, they move out of Mayo. Can you talk about the challenges of being a superintendent of a town like this with all of its strengths and challenges?
Well, one of the things before coming to Rochester, I worked at Des Moines Public Schools, and that's a district of 32,000 students and a very diverse student population. When I was there in Des Moines, 51% of our students were students of color, and I think our free and reduced percentage at that time was 70%. So it was a very diverse urban district. And I was serving there as like a regional superintendent. Our superintendent broke us up into 3 smaller districts, and I was responsible for about 10,000 students, 2 high schools, 4 middle schools, and 12 elementaries. We're all part of the region, and I think that experience working in that urban, diverse system really prepared me to come to Rochester. And really, when I thought I was ready to be a superintendent and started interviewing, I only pursued districts that had a diverse student population. That's something that I have a passion for.
Right.
I think a lot of it has to do with when I had grown up and going through public schools when I was a kid. And I experienced some things that a lot of our students of color encounter. You know, even to this day, I remember a senior in high school, and it was my time to sit down and talk with our school counselor. And I'd never talked to a person the entire time I was in high school. And I walked in and sat down, and he looked at me and he said, "Well, you're going to go to work right out of high school, right?" And he had judged what my future was based on what I looked like. And so, you know, having those type of experiences as I've grown up, and even sometimes as an adult, it's really gave me that passion and want to work in a diverse school district, and so that's why I pursued the superintendent job here in Rochester, and it's been a great experience. And you know, it is, you know, I tell people we have a lot of diversity within the city of Rochester, and the interesting part, like you mentioned, is within that diversity you have children that are from their fathers or mothers or researchers or physicians in male, and then we also have an immigrant population too.
Absolutely.
So we have a lot of diversity within our diverse student population.
So I know, and I read stats a long time ago, eventually Rochester is growing in its diversity, and we've seen it reflected in the schools. You said Des Moines was 51% students of color. What is Rochester?
We're at about 40%. Right
40%.
Yeah, and if you look at our
real numbers.
Yeah.
Wow.
And if you look at our, you know, if you go into our elementaries, I would say they're even more diverse than our secondary schools. So I think that number is going to continue to grow.
That is huge, but you got to.
Yeah, so we got a couple of questions. The first question is, what's the Tawanda Burks want to know, what's the school district doing to help prevent bullying in the schools and also on social media from the students?
One of the things that we really have made a commitment in this year's budget and the school year is really focusing on what we call SEL. It's the social emotional learning part of our curriculum, and we have a K-8 curriculum called Second Step that we're using, and it's really talks about building relationships, student to teacher, and within the student population as well. And one of the things that we're really struggling with is what do we do at the high school level, and we have been meeting with a group of high school students trying to get their input on what really type of social emotional learning would fit for high school students. So we're still working with them and haven't really found anything yet, but we'll continue to try to find something that really meets their needs.
Okay, and the second question was, as chair, Tawanda Burks, the same person, she said, as chair of the Afro-American Studies at Mayo, what can she do or the organization do to help with that, with the kids?
Well, I think a couple things. One is those are the type of people we really want to be involved in we have a district curriculum team. We want community members to come in and be part of that and give us suggestions on how we can really change our curriculum to really match and meet the needs of all of our students. So that would be one way. And you know, one of the things that as I traveled around and attended a few conferences and talked to other superintendents, and there's a lot of research now that's showing that if students, especially students of color, if they have a mentor, especially a mentor that looks like them, they tend to be more successful. And I think, you know, that's one of the things that I get often asked is, well, what are we doing to try to increase our teachers of color? And one of the things that we started when I came is a partnership with Munoz State University, and it's called our Parent-to-Teacher program. And you know, if you look at our paraprofessionals, which are very valuable in our system, but they're more reflective of our student population than our teaching population. So we've really tried to work with them and get them on a fast track to get their teaching license. And basically, it's 2 summers in 1 year. They take courses in the evenings and weekends, and they can get their teaching license. But we were able to hire a few teachers through that program, but one of the things that we discovered recently is that it's a challenge even for our parents to take those courses. Yes, they're in the evening, they're on the weekends, but how do you pay for tuition? So we're in the process of trying to find a way to get, you know, a grant or something that would really help them with tuition. I think that may motivate them more to want to go into being that parent teacher program. The other thing is really kind of thinking outside the box a little bit. Is we've had some conversations with the University of Alabama, and we've had them to Rochester a couple of times, and we've talked to their Dean of Education program, and you know, is there some type of partnership we can do? For example, one of the things that we talked to them about is with their students, their college students that need to do their student teaching, would they come to Rochester to do their student teaching?
Oh, that's a good idea.
We would find them housing, so they wouldn't have to pay for housing. They would do their student teaching in Rochester in the hope that they would like it well enough that they'd want to stay and work for us. So those are the types of things that we're doing, and we also started a program for high school students where there's 2 courses that we offer now that they can get college credit for. And really trying to expose them to education and hopefully encourage them to want to go into the field of education.
That's a good idea.
You can come up if you have any questions.
Hello. Okay. Ms. Munoz, so because you've had an extensive amount, it sounds like you've had quite a bit of experience working in Iowa with diversity and youth of colors in the school district. A lot of the concerns that are coming up as far as bullying and not having enough Afro-American teachers, these are all issues that have been brought up over the past 6-7 years I've been here in Rochester running the Journey program. I know that you said that the school district was looking for more programs to connect with in the community that fits the need of the youth as far as life skills and different things like that. The Journey program has been around in the Rochester community for 7 years, and this is a program that has been successful through the Boys and Girls Club, where we had a young lady by the name of Rosalind Moore who got a key to the city, scholarships and everything, and she gave all that credit to the Journey program. We're not sure why our programs are not being included through the school district. I know we were looked at one point, and then the next point, the district pretty much said we're not interested. And we have over between 50 and 100 youth who are in middle school and in high school who are begging for the Journey program to be in existence, which is a life skills program for them. Like I said, that we've been running for the past 6-7 years. And with no explanation, the district refuses to allow this program to come to pass. And the 21st Century Grant was offered to the Rochester School District for a program specifically like this. So that's just one question why the Journey program has been rejected through the school district. That's just my first question. My second question is, I hear you saying that the school district is working on trying to get Afro-American teachers here, but this has been a struggle for the past 7 years. So I understand that you guys are working on it, but I also would like the school district to understand that me as an adult standing as the voice of the youth in this community, we are losing our Afro-American young women and young men daily. They're dropping out. The dropout rates for African-American students because of the violence that's going on in the schools is like at least over 50%.
Well, let me address that first. You must be stating national or state in Rochester. Our African American students or Black students are graduating at a much higher rate than 50%. Actually, that's one of the things that we're really proud of, probably since I came. Not only has our overall student graduation rate continued to grow, but if you look within Blacks and Latinos and special ed, those groups have grown anywhere from 10 to 20%, all above, way above the state average in graduation rate. So Our black students are way higher. They're in the 70%. It's not 50%. Is it where it needs to be? No, but I would say that's one of the things that, because of many of the things that we put in place at the high school, we are seeing great gains in graduation rate of our students of color. So that's something that we're really proud of, but know that we still have a long ways to go. As far, you did mention the 21st Century Grant, and this time around we were able to get another funding that was for our secondary students. I think it's at 2 of the high schools and a couple of the middle schools. I'm not for sure if you spoke with Amy Ike, if that's why. I know maybe you and I might have talked a couple of years ago about that when you were just starting the program, I think. We'd be happy to look at it. I'm assuming you're wanting it to be part of an after-school program. That's something that we can look at. I'm not for sure why it was denied the first time, but that's something we can take another look at.
And I really do appreciate you addressing that, Mr. Munoz. We have gotten to the level of signing a contract with Amy Ike, and after a couple of weeks it was rejected, but I don't want to focus on that part. I think I want to just focus on some of the issues that the youth have and may have questions to you. And want to know if you could answer some of those. We had a Teen Summit Part 1 and Part 2 recently. We had it at the Chamber of Commerce on this past Wednesday, where we had a panel of at least 12 students who were present, who were students from John Adams and John Marshall School. And one of the issues that they brought forward was that there was no busing available for John Adams students and John Marshall students to be able to get to the Boys and Girls Club where there's additional programming. Their biggest concern is that there's after-school programming through community education for sports and different things, but the programs that are available through community education for after school at those schools does not meet the need of our African American students. Our African American students are looking for life skills programs that talk about relations and relationships, that talk about why education is important, that talk about historical Black colleges. A lot of our youth are not educated about the ACTs and BSUs and things like that. The John Marshall High School and does not educate them about African American high schools at all. There are no studies on Black history when it comes to college for the students. So having after-school programs that inform our youth about these opportunities are important to us, as well as having teachers of color that look like them and not just the paras. One of the issues that came up for the students at the Teen Summit was we have African American and people of color that are paras, but as soon as the students of color get close to the paras of color and start to go to them with their questions and concerns and confide in them, the schools either fire or punish the paras or hall monitors of color, and the students can tell because they become distant from the students. And this isn't coming from me. If you take a look at our Teen Summit, one of the students that's on the panel for the Teen Summit, she's actually, her name is Huda, she's watching live. She is the president of the Diversity Council at John Marshall High School, and a lot of these concerns come from her, as well as other students from that student body that's along with her in that group. One of the biggest concerns that we have is there's youth who are saying that there's drugs in the school, that there are athletes who are actually doing cocaine before the games, and that's why the students at John Marshall can't seem to win a game. There's rumors that there's a lot of people smoking weed and selling weed in the John Marshall High School, and all of these rumors of drugs being in our school has become a distraction for our youth to be able to stay focused. If you have a student who is high at school every day, which is a group of kids who are high up every day, it makes it difficult for other people to concentrate, because when you're under the influence, your behavior isn't normal. There's so many youth that are in our schools districts, particularly John Adams and John Marshall, who have mental health problems, and there's no programming that is geared directly towards mental health services for our youth. I know that there's services at the ALC, but I don't know of any, and the youth also don't know of any services that are available for kids who are having issues with mental health, who are having issues with drug abuse, who are having issues with pregnancies, who are having issues with, so many of them are getting truancies because they're not sitting in their seat when the bell rings. They're marked with an unverified absence even though they're in the classroom. And 10 of those are going to get you in truancy court, which changes a child's life. And if you have a fight, you're going to get kicked out of the school, which also sends a message that we don't want you here. So we just want to know, how does the school district plan on handling some of these issues, particularly with the mental health and the drugs and things like that?
Well, you said a lot, but I'll try to kind of summarize. The mental health, I can tell you, we do student listening sessions at all the middle schools and high schools. And we're in an area for 2 to 3 hours, and kids can come in and talk about whatever they want. What we heard a lot last year was the mental health, and that's why we added the second step curriculum that I mentioned earlier. We've increased our social workers. We now have counselors at every elementary. We made quite a commitment to mental health. We still need to do a lot more. The other part, as far, okay, can I finish, please?
Oh, sure.
The other part was the drugs. Yeah, we're aware of that. If you want to come to one of our, I can't remember which February board meeting is going to be, you're going to see, we're going to report our first semester discipline data. You're going to see some students that were suspended for drugs. If it happens and we're aware of it, we address it, and there's consequences for having possession, and there's severe consequences for distribution of drugs, which is expulsion. So we're aware that that's happened, and it's being addressed when we're able to made aware of it or be able to prove that it happened. We do listen to our students. That your Diversity Council, JM, I attended one of their meetings last year. I think it's a great organization. One of the things that we're working to do this second semester is we want to get our students of color, and obviously we're not going to be able to get every one of them, but we want to get a good representation of the high schools and just have a conversation. Talk to us about your experience as a student of color in your school. So that's something that we do have planned, and I have a group I meet with every month. It's called the Student School Board. Actually, some of the JM students that are on that Diversity Council attend that as well. So we do listen to their voice, and they do help us make a lot of changes based on what they tell us is going on in our school. So we're not perfect. We continue to get better. One of the things I will pride ourselves in, I think in the last couple of years, it took us a while to figure it out, but we need to listen to the voice of our students, and we have been really trying to do that. Our listening sessions we go to, the Student School Board, and I know a couple of our high schools even have students come in August in 2 days when they're working on their school improvement plan, getting the voice of the student to help them develop that plan. So it's something that we're not where we need to be yet, but we are trying to really understand that our students are our number one customer, and we need to, just like if I'm a business person, you want to listen to your customers, and our students are our customers, and we're trying to find ways to do that.
If I can add something in for perspective, but I know you had a question.
Yeah, just comments.
And Superintendent, you're kind of like, and thank you for your questions. You're kind of like a cop in a way. I mean, you've got a lot on your plate, and again, we respect what you do. But maybe an overarching question, at least a couple of them, maybe this is too big to answer. How can a nonprofit partner with Rochester Public Schools? Because obviously, the public schools can't do everything, right? If the primary motivation is to educate, and you got mental health, chemical health, and various issues, unless, and this is going to be my second question, unless the public school system takes on a social service model, being a social worker, the expectations are way too high. So if the goal is education for public schools, and I don't know although I have a master's in education leadership, I don't know what's going on nowadays. I'm old now. How does a nonprofit partner with Rochester Public Schools to augment many of the issues that she has talked about and folks in the audience want to deal with, so that it's not on RPS's plate? And then two, and maybe this is way down the line, does the public school system need to adopt a social service model to get through this? Because mental health and all this stuff, and it's legit, drugs, the whole night is crazy. Is it better more long term that the school system say, guess what, we got to take on a social service model to educate? but is that kind of hurting education? So I just
Well, I think you know there's a lot of argument about that, and I'll tell you where I stand in that. But you know, some people say we're just here to educate students, and you know that the other things that get in the way should be done by someone else. And you know, I don't agree with that. I think it's something that there's the mental health. There's other issues that many of our children are experiencing before they even walk in the doors.
Absolutely, yeah.
And if you don't address it, there's no way they can learn.
That's true.
You know, we call it community schools. It's not social. We have John Marshall is a community school this year. We have Riverside and Gage Elementary.
Oh, so they're
an ALC.
Oh,
so
wow.
they're already in our term. They call it community schools, full service, and you bring those social services in the school. The ALC, we have Male has a health clinic in there. We do have a chemical dependency program at the ALC.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
They have, you know, they have washers and dryers. I mean, it's just really trying to address the things that get in the way of students before they can learn. And then at the elementary level, they have family center rooms where parents can come in and if they need to use a computer to type up a resume.
Oh,
that's
nice.
available. If they need clothes, they need food. It's in this.
So you all are adopting this type of model.
Yeah, it's right now it's only in 4 of our schools, but I think you know as we continue to go and as the needs continue to grow, we're going to have to put that type of programming in more of our schools. And you know, and you mentioned earlier partnering with nonprofits or partnering with others. That you know, it's you know there's not enough funding from the state that we get, so we have to find ways to partner with others to provide services that our students need because we just don't have the funding to do all of it on our own. You know, the community schools model is a good way to do that. You find partners who want to come in and work with you. And one of the things that we're really excited about, I'm not sure how familiar you are with it, but is the Cradle to Career program. It's the Strive Together program, and that's really, it talks about the entire community coming together for this common good of our students, and that's something that we're part of, and we're hoping some big things out of that right now. They're focusing on preschool or getting kids ready for school and high school graduation are the 2 networks that they're focusing on right now. So that would be a great place for community members or nonprofits to. That's a great organization to become part of and work together with us. But you know that's something I think as needs continue and you know. We mentioned earlier I was in California for a conference and there were probably another 50 superintendents there from all over the U.S. and they're struggling with the same things we are.
Right.
Mental health was the #1 thing that came up with everybody and how do we address that? And we all talk about how we have to partner with our community. And you know I came back in 2011 and I remember going out and speaking to various groups and you know. I said, you know, really, it's not just the responsibility of the school; it's in our entire community's responsibility to educate our children, and that's what we have to do. We have to partner together to get into those barriers that get in front of our students. You know, if I'm struggling with where I'm gonna sleep tonight, or I didn't have food, how can I sit down and learn how to read or learn how to do math? So. I think we have to address those things.
So is there an official process for like the Journey program to fill out an application?
I've gone through the Journey I thank you for trying to speak for the Journey program has gone through that process.
Well, I'm just trying to make it official because there's other programs that want to
okay.
partner. So I'm just trying to figure out what that official way to link with you, so other folks know. And then and I'm not sure what the refusal process. Do you have to be an official nonprofit? Certain bells and whistles? No, how do they do that?
Yeah, I think, and what I would encourage you to do is reach out to Julie Brock. She's the executive director of Cradle to Career. That to me would be a great fit, especially if we're looking at the network. The high school graduation network is one of the focuses that they're working on right now, and that's really about all the different organizations, both for-profit or not-for-profit, that are working with high school age students, and that would be a perfect fit for you. And the other is just through an after-school programming. That's, as mentioned earlier, we do have a 21st Century grant that allows us to funding for after-school programming now at the high school level and middle school. So that would be another way as well.
Okay.
so I want to catch up on some questions. I know, then we go to the audience right after this. Heidi Mae Wilkins said that, the state average for the dropouts are some of the lowest in the nation. And, so is our standards too low? Do we need to, make our standards a little higher?
No, I don't think I don't think it's the standards are too low or too high. I think it's, I challenge anybody that's out there listening and those of us in this room right now, I would guarantee the graduation requirements we have right now today are exactly the same when we were in high school.
I beg to differ, so
And,
respectfully, I beg to differ. I work with over 60% of the African American youth in this town, and I can guarantee you at least 95% of them risk to drop out, and they also believe that they all wish to even have a better relationship with you, Mr. Munoz.
Well, we can potentially get some stats on that.
But,
Get that out.
yeah, I would say, I think it's more, if you look, in my opinion, the graduation requirements that are set by the state are the same when I was in high school in the 70s. And I think things have changed, careers have changed. To expect every student to have to take 4 years of English, 3 years of science, and 4 years of math, and if I'm going to go into let's say I have a passion for technology and I'm going to go into that career mode, do I need to take some of the same requirements that a student is going to go to a 4-year college or going to be a physician or whatever? But I think education requirements, graduation requirements haven't changed and haven't adjusted to our current times, haven't adjusted to what our students are wanting, and we have 10 career pathways out at CTEC, and some students, it's a challenge to take courses out there because they have to meet all the requirements by the state.
Right.
And if I'm a student that wants to go into, let's say the back in the day when I was in school, it's called industrial tech, but now it's something different. If I want to go that pathway, but I still have to meet all the requirements from the state to graduate, and it may inhibit me from taking all the 4 courses that are out at CTEC. So I think we need to look at, and it's not lowering the standards, it's really giving more flexibility so the students could really pursue things that they're passionate about or careers that they want to pursue, and whereas I think really the current graduation requirements are pretty much saying every student should fit into this pathway, and doesn't give them much flexibility.
Okay, another one is a comment saying that some of the disciplinary practices here in Rochester Public Schools are examples of the prison pipeline.
Yes.
It's pretty public out here that we were part of an OCR agreement, and the last couple of years we were out of that agreement, and I think we did some really great things. We redid our handbook and made some changes I think that needed to be made, and then we're currently one of, I think it's 41 districts in the state of Minnesota that are working with the state Human Rights Commission to address the discipline disparities, and it's something that we continue to work on. I'm looking forward to, I haven't seen our first semester data yet from this current school year, so not for sure what kind of progress we've made there. If you look at last year's data overall, we really haven't made a lot. But if you look at some of the schools have really have shown some improvement in that area. But we still have a long ways to go with that. We spent 4 years working with Dr. Shraki Holly on culturally responsive teaching, and that's been, I think, helpful. But we still have a lot of work to do in that area, and it's something that that we're working with these other 41 districts in the state of Minnesota to try to learn from each other and work together and network to try to come up with some solutions for that.
I agree.
That was my question.
Oh,
Okay.
So there's some improvements coming, because that's a big one. Go ahead.
So a couple of more. I want to catch up to some of these questions. So what are your priorities for the Rochester Public School District?
Well, bottom line is the safety of our students and staff is #1 priority for me. And when you talk about safety, it's not just the physical safety; it's also the emotional safety.
Okay.
And like I said, we've been doing student listening sessions, and and for the students to tell us that, you know, mental health is a #1 priority for them, and that could be anywhere from chemical dependency to, you know, I'm taking 4 AP courses and my parents expect me to do straight A's and all those, and I'm doing, because of that, I'm doing 4 hours of homework every night, and it's a challenge for me to get out of bed in the morning. I mean, we had students who told us things like that, and so it's our responsibility to try to find ways to address that and provide them support. So when I say safety, it's not just the physical building safety, it's also the emotional safety for the students. And the other is making sure that students are successful, and we prepare them to be whatever they want to be. If it's to go to college, if it's to enter in the workforce, or whatever career they want to choose, is that we give them the skills so they can do that. It's kind of like when I grew up. I want to give them that key to go through whatever door they want to go through, and it's our job to give them those skills so they can do that.
Okay. One more before we get back to you, Ms. Shannon. They want to know, can you provide any updates or any information about homeless teens? Do you have any way of knowing?
Well, yeah, when I came here in 2011, we had a half-time staff person who was working with the term we use at the state level is students in transition, which is homeless. And at that time, we were around about 400 students, and right now that person is full-time because we're pushing about 500 students that we're aware of that are homeless.
Wow.
You know, a couple of years ago, we partnered with Center City Housing. They purchased the old Gage East building and built housing there. I've been in conversation with at the city and county level, and I know the city and county are working hard to try to provide affordable housing. And you know, that goes back to one of the other things that we were talking about earlier this morning, that you know, if I don't know where I'm going to sleep tonight, how can I spend 7 hours in a building and learn? And so I think, you know, it's one of those things that we as a community have to understand that you have to have housing's isn't #1 priority. If you don't have a place to live, how can you be successful, and how can you as a student learn? So I think it's something that we as a community have to really focus on and try to address. And I think that there's some nonprofits that are focusing on it as well, and I'm fortunate to be on the chamber board, and the chamber board has been involved in this as well. So I think we as a community need to continue doing that. And at the school, we're going to try to do everything we can. And you know, I mentioned the community schools is trying to provide types of support and services for families like that. And our person is fortunate that, you know, we do have a few, I guess you can call them vouchers, where if somebody's in a situation, we can provide some type of housing support for them. It's not very long. It's just for a few days to help them find something else. But it's something that I think is hugely important to our community.
Okay, Mr. Munoz, I just want to say that I've heard what the school district has done in the past. I'm also hearing what they plan to do in the future, and I want to just first respectfully say that I think all the programs that are going on right now are awesome programs, and I think they will benefit this community greatly. But I'd like for you to understand, as well as anybody else that's mixed decision that's a part of the Rochester Public Schools, the point that we're trying to make is there's an emergency going on with our kids of color in the school district that we'd like for someone to take seriously. Because eventually what's going to happen is it's going to be a small problem that's going to grow to a bigger problem. And then it's going to be a small community of African American people who's going to take one little small situation and blow that one situation up. And we're at a civil rights level at this point now because nobody took the situation seriously enough to do something about it now. That's like a car that's broken down. Just because my car is broken down doesn't mean I don't have to go to work. I have to find a solution right now to get to work, to take care of my responsibilities so that we don't create more problems. So I understand that there's programs and different things that the school district is working on in the future, But right now, we need a solution for our kids who are having fights every day in school, and there's no system in place to try to prevent this. There's no teachers of color right now, but there's paras in place that can help. There are other solutions that can be made to kind of help slow some of this violence in the school down. Do we need to get a meeting together with the people who make the decisions? Because by it being drugs in the school, I understand that you already have policies and procedure in place for people who are doing the drugs in the school, but apparently that's not helping to decrease the problem, because it's just increasing from what we see. A lot of our kids, we have a partnership and a sponsorship with the Minnesota Adult and Teen Challenge Program, and a lot of the youth at John Marshall High School are on that list. A lot of youth who are at John Adams are on that list for alcoholism, and that may not be as important to you guys on the list to get it done now. Maybe later on the agenda. We understand you have a lot on your plate, but as an African-American mom, just being an African-American person is hard enough. Just waking up every day, whether you know this or not, just being a Black person alone is hard. So if I heard you say that the kids come into school with problems, which is true. The first problem they have is waking up as a Black person. Their parents have these emotional and mental health issues, but they have to deal with teaching their kids. You guys have, not you particularly, but the schools have our kids for 8 hours of the day. We have our kids, they come home 6:30 after the after school program. We've got 3 hours to deprogram our kids from the negative environments that they're in under the Rochester School District supervision for the whole entire day. So I understand our kids come in with problems, but we only have 3 to 4 hours out of the day on top of cooking dinner and going through mental health issues with our kids to deprogram them from being in an environment where there's drugs, where there's lack of communication, where there's teacher against student mentality. Our African-American kids have major issues, and whether the school district chooses to address this or not, we as a community are going to address this. The Journey program is going to address this. The Rochester Chamber of Commerce have agreed to address this. And any other organization of color is going to jump on board to address this. And I think it's in the best interest of the Rochester Public School District to jump in and do what they can immediately to try and address this, so that they don't look like they're on the other end of the table, which I know you guys are not.
We're not, and I would not gonna argue with about it. We are working on that. So is it fixed perfectly? No, and we're willing to partner with you and anybody else who wants to work with us on this issue to find solutions. That's we're all for that.
We have a student that want to talk.
Yeah.
Come on.
Hi, my name is Mayari. I'm a senior at John Marshall High School, and one of I'll just go up here. Just like basically going off of what Miss Mashana said, like it is really hard, like, you know, being an African American, and like I understand that, you know, it's the steps that teachers and people have to take to be in these professions, like being a teachers, and we do have these paras that are just like us, and we have someone to relate to. But one of the major issues, or one of the major issues that I have, is that I feel as when I go to school, there's nobody that I can turn to. When I go to school, it's a very toxic environment. I feel like when I go there, I go there for these 8 hours and they just expect me to do all this, do all this work, but they don't really know what goes on at home. They don't know anything. And like when I go to school, you have these teachers, and I feel like these teachers aren't here to, like, they're here to teach us, but I feel like that's what they're really here. They're just here for teachers. They're here for the paycheck. I don't feel like there's a teacher, well, there's like a couple teachers, but some of the teachers that I have, or some of the parents that I have, or some of the principals, I just feel like they're just there. There's no one there that I can talk to. There's no one there that would take their time out in the day. They'd be like, okay, I see you going through things. Like, they expect us to do all this homework, to do all these tests, to do everything, but they don't know what's really going on. That's like the one thing that like really like sucks, and like it makes me not want to go to, like, it makes like a lot of people not want to go to school. And then the other issue is that we have all these fights, and then we just take we just I see them take like a lot of the students out, but when we take the students out, you don't see what they're really going through. People can go through a lot, and when you take the students out of school and send them to the ALC or send them to Phoenix or just send them anywhere, it's not helping the student at all. It's not, and especially being an African American, and these days when we have a lot of white teachers, there's like nobody that truly, like I said, that truly understands us.
Well, first of all, I apologize because it's important for every student at least have one adult in that school that they can feel comfortable talking to, and that's something that I need to have a conversation with the administrators in that school, because no matter what color you are, what student you are, you should have at least one adult in that. And I'm a former high school teacher, so this statement is talking about me as well. One of the things that I think in education is, in elementary, we teach kids, we teach children. When I get to high school, I teach English. And I think that's what gets lost.
Right.
I'm just a content person versus forgetting the person. I'm teaching another human being, and that's something that we have to change. And I'll probably admit it, back in the 70s and 80s when I taught English, I taught English. I didn't teach children, but I've learned over the years in being in over 40 years in public education. And I said this to all of our teachers in August when we came back to school. I said, you know what? I don't care if you teach anything the first week of school. You need to build a relationship with your students. And I said, you know, that will, I'm going to be behind. I said, if you build that relationship, you're going to go a lot further with those kids than you are.
Right.
If I started giving you the syllabus and started teaching you something that first day. So that's something that we need to get better at, because you should have an adult in that school that you can go to. If you need to talk to somebody, you should be able to go to somebody. And we're going to have to fix that for you.
So on that note, somebody want to know, what is the accountability process for the teachers that's not doing what they're supposed to be doing as a teacher?
Well, you know, they're evaluated on how they teach the whatever they're teaching, and there is a part of their evaluation is on their relationship they have with the students in the classroom, and that's something that is part of their evaluation. It's not the only part that they're evaluated on, but it's something that we as a system believe in and try to impress upon them and try to give them ways on how they can build those relationships with students. And Shraki Holly, the work that we've done with Dr. Holly is the same thing. You have to build, first of all, you need to understand your students and what culture they come from, what kind of background, and it's something that we do as adults. When we build relationships, we get to know the people that we're working with or interacting with, and that's something that the adults that are working with our children have to do. And you know, as adults, some of us can do that easier than others. So I think some teachers are really good at building relationships with students, and some it's a struggle.
And that's a good point, because that was coming to the next question I had about the cultural competency of the teachers. You know, you got a lot of inner city kids coming from different cities and different situations, traumatic situations at that, you know, and then some of the teachers don't know how to deal with them, and they see it as threatening behaviors, or maybe they just don't understand, so they single these kids out to either not teach them as well, or not interact with them, or give them the attention.
Yeah, that's something that really, the work we've done with Dr. Shraki Holly, really, it's a lot more complicated than what I'm going to try to explain it, but it's like a student comes into your classroom and you perceive the behavior as misbehaving. The first question you ask yourself, is that a culture thing, or is it because of their background? Don't immediately go to, well, in my mind, this is how everybody should act.
Right.
So that's the first question you ask yourself. And then you have to bridge that behavior, that culture, to what the expectation is in the classroom. Because he says, you have to do that, but you also have to, and he calls it going to get your driver's license. You need to behave a certain way to get your driver's license. We honor their culture, but we also know here in the classroom, this is how we have to behave. This is the type of environment we need to have in our classroom. I'm not disregarding your culture, your background, your experiences. I acknowledge it, but I'm going to bridge you back to this is what we have to have in our classroom, and that's a very simple explanation of the work that he does. But we've been working with him for 4 years, and I think in some places that they're doing much better. I remember last year going to a student listening session at Kellogg, and the students said, I don't know what you're doing with teachers, but these were students of color. I said, I don't know what you're doing with the teachers, but could you also do it with the substitute teachers? So some of them are starting to see the change. Are we where we need to be? No, it's something that takes a long time, and adult mindset takes a long time to change people's mindset. You know, I did an activity with the new teachers in August, and it was an activity that I learned at a conference, and you have these different color of little beads that represent different ethnic groups. And you ask questions about people that when you were growing up, what bead represents the people who were at your church? Who were your friends growing up? And basically what it was is that my little baggie of beads was multicolored. Some of the people in the room, they all had all white beads. And it was really to try to show is no bag is better than the other, but you have to understand many of your students, their bags are going to look like this, and here's yours. And you have to be able to understand that they're coming from different backgrounds and different experiences than you had growing up. And you have to be able to keep that in mind when you are interacting and building relationships and educating our students, because we're going to continue to get more diverse, as I mentioned earlier, and it's something that we have to get better at, understanding our students and building relationships with them.
And that was a question, and also from one of the people, Riska wanted to know, what are you doing to get teachers of colors, Black and Hispanic teachers, especially male, don't really have much of those.
No, we don't. And you know, I mentioned the partnership we have with Munoz State University, and you know,
and we did learn from a state level. There's some state policies and programs via, I forget who we had here.
That was a superintendent from Owatonna.
Owatonna, and there's some state help as well. I'm sorry.
Yeah, there's actually a couple grant funding from the state for Grow Your Own programs. We already have Grow Your Own programs, but what we would like them to do is allow you to use that money to pay for their tuition, because you know, unfortunately our paras don't make a lot of money. So yeah, it's great that you can take courses at night and on the weekend, but
it's hard to do.
Having the money to pay for tuition but still pay the bills is a challenge. So that we're trying to figure out a way to try to find some funding to help with that tuition, because we think that's the barrier.
Oh, you have a question? We got heard. We get the superintendent out here, so a couple of questions.
Just the perspective of my son-in-law is a teacher in Chicago, and then from their perspective, there's a lot of pressure on the performance of a teacher. You know that and also the funding is they don't get paid that well, and then some of them even have to fork in some money to make the classroom be more for reading purpose and all that. So how do you look at that situation about?
Yeah, I agree. A lot of times people say, well, let's look at Finland, for example. And if you're a teacher in Finland, you're right up there at the level as physicians and lawyers. In our country, teachers are not seen at that level. And I have said this publicly multiple times. Teaching today is much more challenging than it was back in the 70s and 80s when I taught. Just because of the things that we've been talking about this morning, the different challenges that our kids come with every day, and the mental health and everything. I don't believe in our country, or even in the state of Minnesota, that we really value the teachers that we have. And I know I probably shouldn't say this here with Mayo Clinic being right in Rochester, but I think teaching is the most important career. I mean, where else do you have an opportunity every day to make a difference in a child's life? and in a positive way. And you know, unfortunately, as a superintendent, you only have so much money to run a system our size, and we would love to be able to pay our teachers more than what we currently pay them, and but I also know I have to, you know, pay the $10-11 million every year for busing and everything else, and the board requires us to have a 6% fund balance, so staying within the financial parameters that we have, and so saying that, you know, that could be, well, yeah, it's a great excuse, but so I think what we have to do is, as not only as administrators and superintendents, but even community, that we have to really find other ways to show teachers that we value them, and we really appreciate that the work they do with our children every day, and because we just, you know, we're in the state of Minnesota, we're pretty low on what we pay our teachers, and so I think we have to find other ways to show how we appreciate them and value what they do every day, because I say this often, that, you know, I'm the superintendent and I run our system, but they're in the classroom every day doing the real work.
Yes.
And that's extremely important.
And with that being said, I got one more question from Tawanda Burke. She said, "Thank you for the support of the BDPA. And what can they do as the board to get more students of color into the STEM program?"
Yeah, I think, you know, that's a great program. You know, that's the only program we have where we can say we have some national champions. I think when I first 6 years,
That's right.
they were 4 out of the first 6 years I was here, they were national champions, and I'm fortunate to get invited to their dinner every in September, and it's just amazing what they do, and those volunteers giving up their Saturday mornings to work with our students, and work especially with our students of color, and really the skills I believe that they're learning, if they go into some type of STEM field or technical field, great, but even if they don't, I think just the skills that they're learning on those Saturdays is extremely important, will help them in any career that they want. But you know, I think this year we opened up our first entrepreneur program. It's called Incubator EDU, and that really idea came to me based on what they were doing in the Black Data Processing Association, and it's similar, but it's not just in technology, but it's really you have a problem, design a solution, either a product or a service to fix that problem, and really giving kids the skills to be able to do that, and but really that program that we started this year really the idea came from me attending their banquets and learning what our kids are capable of doing.
Yes.
Wow.
And one more comment from Tawanda. I know she's just all over the place with this one. She said if students need any, and we got another student question. If students need any type of help, they can contact Dr. Balakers YU organization.
Right. I didn't know that. One more real quick, because we got this busy bit down here.
I have a question. Why? Okay, so where I'm from, we have driver's ed. Like, it's a requirement. It's like an actual class. And why don't we have one of those? Because I know there's a lot of students. Like, for me, since it took me a while to actually get the money together and pay for those classes, because those classes are expensive. I just wanted to know why isn't that a requirement class for especially for students or minorities or just anybody who doesn't have the money to afford it?
Yeah, I think what I was told years ago, the district used to offer that as a course. I don't think it was required, but it was an option. And I think what I was told, it was one of the things that was cut back in the days when the district was making a lot of cuts. Like in 2010, they made $9 million in reductions, and I'm not sure what year that was cut, but I think it was one of the reductions that they were trying to balance the budget, and they had to make cuts. They made cuts in a lot of the middle school exploratory courses that every year we try to figure out ways to try to bring some of these things back, and it just has been a challenge. We just haven't had the money to do it. And when our state, about 80% of our funding comes from the state, and every year if we're lucky, we get a 2% increase. Well, our costs are about 3 to 4% higher every year. So we're spending more than what's actually coming in. You know, our two largest employee groups of our teachers and principals, and they both settled at one at 5, one a little over 5% over a 2-year period, and so in that 2-year period you're only getting 4% new money, so your salaries are more expensive than the money you're bringing in. So I think that's kept us from being able to bring back things like driver's ed and exploratory courses, and you know, it's something that I think we every year. I know a couple of the organizations I belong to as a superintendent, we try to lobby for more funding from the state, because our costs are going every year are more than what we're bringing in, and,
No doubt.
it's just been a challenge. But it was one of the budget reductions over the years, and it's just it's hard to bring in additional things when you don't get enough new money coming in.
Well, Superintendent, we want to thank you for being here. If I can throw some perspective out here, and gentlemen, I'll allow you to challenge me on this, but as we try to keep it real here in the barbershop, I think a lot of these things, and I applaud the school system for taking on all this, but all this can't be looked at within a silo. I mean, if 40% of the school system is African American or students of color, 6% of Rochester is African American, 40%, the high 30s of the criminal justice system is African Americans, 90%, or I think it's high 80s of African Americans live in the Twin Cities area. I say all this to say this: that there's a power vacuum, and I don't mean power in the sense of what we typically say it, but we need more people in various key positions to help with the issue you're dealing with. There's no way in the world that you, Superintendent, and I applaud you for having broad shoulders to take this on, because I think regardless you're going to take it on, and certainly you have some issues to improve on. There's no question there. But I applaud you because you're taking on everything: mental health, education. You talk about transportation, helping folks do their laundry and all that. I think that's amazing. But the truth of the matter is, as valid as these issues are, and they're very, 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 very valid, we need churches, we need politicians, we need the NAACP, we need barbershop talk. And I'm gonna say this one last, and Crockett's gonna fire me after I say this, but keeping it real in the barbershop. I learned a long time ago, the first the first teacher of students is the parents. And parents, it's tough. I grew up in at-risk youth. I was the youngest of 3. My small little mama back in Indianapolis had to raise me and my 3 brothers. She did her best. But she kept that belt to our tail. That's old school. You might fire me on that because you can't do that anymore. But we made it. So parents, as tough as it is, you got to be that first teacher to your kids. Right. And then community. There's no question, as we grow here in Rochester, we gotta let us. I mean, I don't know how that works. I'm very ignorant on that. But we gotta get behind you and work with you to do this, because there is no way that a teacher, 4-year teacher, English teacher, went to school to teach English, comes to a classroom with 40% minorities, many of which are at risk, like I grew up and like we grew up. And, oh wait, I was taught to teach English. I wasn't taught to do all this. And even some of our administrators, you know. And so I think that's where our whole system has to say, guess what? This 40% in 10 years is going to be Rochester. What can the cops do? Churches do, NAACP do, a barbershop talk, all these different entities. What can we do to help this? Because otherwise, you're always going to get it all. When we have Chief Franklin, he gets a lot of it too. And the truth is, systems have to get around this whole issue. And actually, we're seeing it all across South Minnesota. The first guest of this year was Superintendent from Owatonna Public Schools. Very small community, but he's seeing the same thing on a smaller scale there as well. So it's a tough go. We appreciate your broad shoulders for coming here and taking on a lot of stuff. However we can help everybody here to help our school system to be the best it can be. But we want to say we applaud you for standing in the gap. That's some big shoes to fill, and we appreciate what you do.
Well, thank you, and I think it's important that, you know, as I said earlier, that I think it's the responsibility of our entire community to educate our children and help them be successful, and to me, there's two types, and this is something that my grandfather taught me along. There's people who point out issues, and then there's people who point out issues and say, let's roll up our sleeves and let's work on it.
I call it proactive and reactive.
Yeah.
So I think that's really what we need. People who want to roll up their sleeves with us and address this, because I think if we don't address this, the challenges are going to be more difficult as we go on.
This is our future.
But I think it's something that we have some good partnerships and they're doing some good things, but we can do better as a community. That's right.
One more question. We like to motivate our young folks and people out there who want to be a Michael Munoz. You and you don't. And one thing, since you've been here since 2011, you don't say much about it, and I appreciate probably why you don't. But you're a man of color that has broke many of those glass ceilings, and now you represent at a very, very high level as a man of color. Like you said, a teacher looked at you and said, "Hey, you need to be. You should be working right out of high school, not going to college." And now you are here as a superintendent of the third largest city in Minnesota, and the second highest populated or employee organization here in Rochester. What can you say to young folks to say, "Hey, you can be all you can be"? What couple of things can you say?
Well, you know, and I have had opportunities to have conversations with students and students of color, and what I tell them is what my father told me growing up is that, you know, that education is the key, and I think you can be and do whatever you want with an education. I'm living proof of that.
Absolutely.
First generation college graduate. I went through as a teacher, a school counselor, a building administrator, and now a superintendent, and it all had to do with the education that I went through and experiences, and it wasn't easy. There's times that people just don't think you're capable of doing it,
right?
And I took that as motivation and
That's right.
prove them wrong that I can be successful. And there's no doubt that I think people of color have more challenges than some, but I personally will not use that as an excuse. It just motivates me to work that much harder. I think it's kind of what we were saying earlier, that we need to have more adults of color interacting with our students, especially and those ones that are being really successful. They can be a model for our students and show that, look at me, I look like you, I've gone through some of the challenges you've gone through, but here's what you can do and here's what you can be. So that's something that I try to share with students when I have an opportunity to do that.
Great. Well, Superintendent, we appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you.
Do we have one more before we close house?
It's a long one. Mal just tuned in. Hey, Mal. So it's too long to even read.
Yeah, they probably should have tuned in earlier.
So I just want to end it with a comment. I want to end it with a comment. You know, even though we got a lot of comments and questions for the superintendent, we also got to hold ourselves accountable.
That's right.
That it takes a village to raise these kids. These are our future. We have to invest. So we can point fingers if we want to, but we should also have a responsibility as a community to come out to these school board meetings, to come out to situations like this, and understand that it's going to take more than just an elected official or a board. We have a voice and we have to use it. So let's do better, guys. Let's do better in this community. If we want our school system to be better, we have to invest into it.
That's right.
And I just want to say in closing that I heard you when you said that it's, when it comes to education, it's the student's responsibility. That's just the way the classroom works. And we totally understand that. And there's no way for the teacher to teach and do their job if the students are not cooperating. And as a community, we just want the school district to be able to allow us, whether it's voluntarily or whatever, to come in and allow us to help with our youth, because at some point it does become a cultural thing where it's just kind of like a language that is spoken. So our intentions are to just come in and be able to be of help and of assistance, whether it's myself or any other organization here. We're here to help.
All right, thank you, guests. You all made this show. Come out to Barbershop Talk. That's why we have the leaders here, so they can be accessible to our community. Thank you all. We
Thanks
appreciate
for the
it.
comments.
Al, thank you.
If we didn't get around with your comments, please tune in next time. We can we'll get you in.
Barbershop Talk.
All right.
Come back. We got some big guests coming up.